Welcome to this episode of the Brandsight podcast, and I'm Elisa Cooper here with Matt Serlin, and today we are joined by Becky Burr, who is Deputy General Counsel and Chief Privacy Officer at Neustar, and more importantly, a member of the ICANN board. So Becky, what do you think the key takeaways from this most recent meeting in Abu Dhabi are?
So we came into the meeting in Abu Dhabi knowing that there would be a huge amount of discussion about GDPR. I feel like we've made huge strides in coming together, listening carefully to each other, understanding that there are real issues for registries and registrars and ICANN in this context, that change is coming and we should all get together to figure out how to make those changes and ensure that contracted parties and ICANN can be compliant and preserve the most frictionless access for legitimate users of WHOIS data that we can. That's huge to me. That's a great takeaway. We've also had important elections here. We have a new chair of the GAC, and I think Manal will be a wonderful GAC chair. The board is very much looking forward to working with her and the new leadership in the GAC. As well, we've had some elections at ICANN. Shireen will be the new board chair, replacing Steve after many years. It's an interesting transition for us. We've tended to have gods of the internet, and now we have a highly competent but still mere mortal, and I think that's a sign of great maturity for the organization. Very excited that Krista Spain, also a longtime ICANN member of the community and longtime ICANN board person, will be the vice chair, and I'll be taking the board governance position.
So, Becky, first off, thanks again for taking time. Back to GDPR for a second. So, for users of WHOIS, and there's many users of WHOIS, but from our standpoint, corporations, people that use WHOIS to get information about domain names to take enforcement actions or the like, how do you think WHOIS is going to change from a practical standpoint after May of next year?
So I think it's pretty clear, and the Dutch Data Protection Authority has said it in no uncertain terms. There is no justification for unfettered public access to all of the WHOIS elements. So I think as a practical matter, we will be moving to a tiered access system. Some limited information will be publicly available, and the remaining information, access to that, will necessarily depend on a analysis that under the GDPR we would call the proportionality analysis. What is the legitimate use? Who's using what data elements for what purpose? Is it legitimate, first of all? And second of all, is it not overridden by the fundamental privacy rights of the individual? So in each case, a balancing test is necessary. I think that there are ways to do that and to ensure that there's accountable use of WHOIS data by those users who have a legitimate need. To my mind, that is certainly brands, corporations that have a need to contact the registrant either to protect their rights with respect to that, or to pursue other perfectly legitimate business interests without stepping on the privacy rights of the individual. The trick is how we make sure that that access is not burdensome, is not unnecessarily burdensome. So I think the hard question for us is in the long term, and I don't see how this could possibly be in place by the end of May, is what is the credentialing system that we use? That's something that I would certainly think in the first instance we would want to ask brands owners and rights holders, what's the right institution that's the source of this information? What's the right mechanism for conveying this information and confirming that you are who you say you are, and that you have a legitimate purpose? That's hard work. I think it would be great if folks could start thinking about that right away. I think as a practical matter, we would all be dreaming if we said it's going to be in place. It's a hard job.
Right, yeah.
That is a hard job. And it's a hard job to make sure it's cost effective and that the costs are allocated in the right places. But for the folks that you are looking out for, we really want people to come to the table and give us their ideas.
Well, I mean, what's been fascinating to me is, we've all been talking about who is forever, for as long as I've participated in ICANN, for as long as you've participated in ICANN, which is longer than I have. And to see it sort of finally come to a head where, we've talked tier access, for years. And I think, at some point in 2018, hopefully, we'll actually get to a point where, it actually, we've seen a sea change. So,
yeah. I think we have seen a sea change, and it's also nice that this is going out with the RDAP pilots and people beginning to use that tool. There's one observation, it's a sort of meta observation about this, which is we have been talking about who is in ICANN for 18 years, and we will continue to talk about it for a while, but we have had a sea change. What happened? Everybody had to climb out of their corners and roll up their sleeves and find a solution. And I think we should take a moment to pause and think about the fact that we seem to need crises or deadlines to get to solutions here. That's not a long-term that is not in the long term a healthy thing for a multi-stakeholder organization. And to me, when I think about this, I think, how do we ensure that everybody, all of the stakeholders have incentives to really engage in conversation and dialogue and get clear on that. And that was a long-winded, that's my anxiety. My solution to that, which is not a solution, but the thing that I've been pushing and that the board has now resolved to do is to have a conversation that we haven't had for a very long time about the specifics of ICANN's mission. We all know what the words are, and we all know what's on specification 1, but is it all black and white? No. We really need to come together and have a consensus view about what the words in the mission and specification 1 mean. And in order to do that, the board is now, with all of its resolutions, will specifically state, we believe that this is within ICANN's mission because of X, Y, and Z, citing points in the bylaws to do that. We are also going to go out with a blog and a discussion paper, and we are going to strongly encourage the supporting organizations and advisory committees to do exactly the same thing, to develop that discipline. It is only by sort of confronting the hard issues here that we are going to create conditions that cause people to understand sort of where they are and understand that simply saying no, being holdouts, and I'm not accusing any particular. There's plenty of this to go around everywhere. That that once we have that shared understanding, it's my hope that it'll be easier to get us there. Now, any other suggestions for getting us past the impasse? We're looking for those as well.
Yeah. Well, Becky, thank you so much. Really great information, and I know that people listening to the podcast will appreciate hearing your perspective. since I'm sure many of them were not here at the meeting.
Well, I'm very excited that we have a ICANN related podcast. This is great. And next time we'll have to advertise some food company or something, food service company.
Yes,
Indeed.
get some sponsors.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Well,
Becky.
thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. I love